Hello there. Good day. How are you? My name is Paul, and I'm here to talk about things that make you go, around our sexuality and why it is so deeply suppressed. So many of us have grown up with some level of religion or other facets of governmental societal control that teach us a very uncomfortable story around our birthright of feeling pleasure in our body. Why would somebody want us to not feel pleasure in our body, to not be able to find someone that they can share a loving connection with and have fun and play and be an adult in fun and play? But our playground is basically suppressed by church and state and other things. You can't do that until you get married. And, well, what's the reasons for that? They basically kind of hint that it'll be some kind of downfall of human society, or women would be getting pregnant all over the place, or whatever. What's the reasons why they shame sex so deeply? The most amazing, playful thing that we could ever experience in a human body, and that's the gift from Source of feeling orgasmicness in our body. Well, who wins when we're not allowed to have that freely? And how does it make people become addicted when you take something away from people and then they have to, in shame, basically pursue it and feel ashamed because we had a one-night stand, or we had pleasure with somebody else, or we're not married, and what would my priest think? What would my parents think? What would my auntie think? Well, we're in a culture where sex has been deeply demonized, dark. All you can do is get diseases from that. All you can do is once you know at an energetic level what dis-ease is, the very shaming of the most innocent act that we could ever have with another being, or making it have attachment or rules or some thing to it, literally causes dis-ease, not feeling comfortable about yourself, your body, your genitals, your whatever. It's all shamed, it's all guilted, and it has created this angst in all of society and all of people in some way, shape, or form that's underneath. And I'm not saying everybody acts out on it or whatever, but it's in the program, it's in the software, it's in the movies, it's in TV, it's in religion, it's in the education system, before we even have a choice to decide. And it's created this real huge confusion inside of a lot of people's bodies. The statistics say that kids in school at 14 years old are seeing their virginity as some kind of a bad thing. And then they're going and having really negative experiences with somebody that has never been taught, because no kids in our school system are taught. They learn from porn and other things that are shamed and guilted. There's no innocence or purity in our interaction with another, in exploration, in play, in love, literally. Sexuality is not an expression of love anymore. It's an expression of the separation of love and pleasure. And it's basically making us go out and feel dirty and be under the covers and hide our expression with another. That's the most innocent thing that we've ever had. Children in the womb have been photographed with MRI technology and the sonar or whatever, as touching themselves and giving them pleasure in their earliest stages of being able to be in a human body. They're seeking pleasure, not to get off and play with themselves or whatever, but because that's their birthright as a human being. And then we have practices where young men come out and they're circumcised because that's supposedly the healthy thing or whatever, which is the most traumatic thing that you could ever do to a man's genitals on the first day of their birth. And they do it to women too. It's happening all over the world because it's supposedly cleaner and whatever, and there's no evidence. They'll just make a bunch of statistics and made up other things to say that this is required or whatever. Why? Why would you harm the most sensitive part of a human's body, men or women? It's because if you traumatize someone sexually, and there's a lot of traumatization that happens, and it's passed down. Once you've traumatized a father, for example, he might pass that down to his daughter or his son, or same with a woman. So we end up in this trauma loop where sexuality is shamed, pain and suffering is expressed. And if you make an adult somebody that's in lack and wounding and other things, they may pass that lack and wounding down to other members of their family, which is huge. We're in an epidemic in this world where everyone is sexually repressed and no one's in their freedom, and they can't explore with another because being sexual with another person is hidden behind dating and attachment, and oh, you're going to marry me, and oh, we're going to have kids together, and all this kind of stuff. When in the shame and in the dark, everybody in college is exploring and having a lot of pleasure and sexuality and acting out because now they've left home and they don't have to listen to what mom and dad said and other things. But there's a lot of shame that goes with that because the parents, the societal condition has basically said that's not okay. You can't do that unless you're married. Oh, you're going to go to hell. What the hell? So for you to explore, and I'll tell you something, that the idea of marriage came at a point from religion. It didn't exist before that. There was things in Celtic religions, etc., things called hand fasting. And I don't know how much you know about hand fasting, but basically you make a marital commitment, not marriage, with a person for a year. And then at the point of what they call Beltane, and they do hand fasting, they basically tie each other's hand, the man and the woman's hands, in a kind of a lacy ribbon or whatever, and make a commitment to each other for a year. And during the period of Beltane, which is a Celtic festival or whatever, there's a week-long period where that person is allowed to explore outside of that hand fasting, and then at the end of the period, they renew their hand fasting vow. So making everybody responsible for creating and building something, I don't think it's a huge exploration. Many don't do anything with it because they're quite happy in their marriage. But how many people get in a marriage and they're bonded, and then there's all these rules and all these traumas and unexpressed things that are going on, and then they hate each other. They build up this resentment because they don't know how to communicate. They don't know how to express their desires and feel good. And there's all these shames and guilts from their religion, from their past, from what their parents are. Maybe they had trauma in their past. There's really no communication. I've been in a marriage. I've had a divorce. It's actually more about what you don't communicate and hoping the other person will figure it out in a marriage than it is about talking. And my marriage got destroyed over it. If I ever decided to be in a marriage again, and that would take a lot of work, but there would have to be a really solid foundation of communication, of touch, of that person self-loving themselves while I can self-love myself as well. And that means honoring me first, having boundaries, having self-trust, etc. And then once that other person has that same thing, then maybe we may connect. We may be sexual. We may be whatever. But do you need a ring on your finger to be sexual with another person? There's a lot of evidence that says that that's not true. If anything, it actually locks and bonds. And then the other person doesn't do a work. They now feel safe. And the only reason that they committed to it in the first place is because they didn't feel safe, or they wanted someone to support them or nurture them or whatever, both sides. It's an act of insanity to go and pursue this thing that's hidden behind all this shame and guilt and other things, and then connect with a person. Well, you can't have sex before marriage. Well, I'll tell you right now, if I'm not sexually compatible with a person, there's no way I'd ever explore marriage. And it's not about getting your cake beforehand or whatever, but I'd sure like to know if that person's sexual or loves sex as much as I do before I lock into a long-term binding agreement and then smash everything and lose half of everything that you've ever created or whatever because you have to share with your partner. And a lot of times those are really out of balance. So who wins when we can't be playful and sexual with other people in a free exploration? And let's say, for example, the world changed tomorrow and everybody was freely sexual and open with each other, which scares the hell out of people. It'll probably trigger you or whatever, and that would be dirty. And look at all the diseases and look at all the children that would be created from that. Well, once people got out of their lack and got out of their shame and guilt, they would only join with a person that either gives them pleasure in a way that they're happy about, or meets their needs and serves them. And instead of kind of racing to the finish and being sexual with someone and it's not working out and blah, 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 instead, what if we said, okay, this person meets my needs. They touch me in ways that I love. I've got a consensual, connected relationship with them, and you're trusting their body and you're feeling them, and there's no games of play and chase and other things which are just searches for validation and lack of self-worth and other things that are in flirting and play and all this trying to be lit up by another person and feeling good about yourself based on their reactions, their smiles, their excitement, etc., which is so indirect. What if you said, hey, you're a beautiful person. I'd really like to get to know you better. And your light, your energy, it turns me on. That's not an invitation for sexuality or whatever. You can take it whichever way you want, but it's like, oh, that's different than just a flirty smile and kind of tease and all this kind of stuff. It's like, oh, you turn me on. It could be considered an invitation, but it can also be, oh, thank you. And if they don't respond, maybe they're turned on as well or whatever. Maybe it's like, okay, they're still exploring. They need more time. They need whatever. But I'll tell you, once all of a sudden that it's like, you turn me on? Oh, you turn me on as well. Can we explore that? And then a hard conversation ensues because you'll be struggling against your shame and other things. But I will tell you right now, when you get to that point and you can do that with another person in a way and support them and hold them in their triggers and whatever shows up in the moment and blah, 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 something magical starts to happen. All of a sudden, that turn on, that excitement transmutes into connection and sharing what your desires are and asking for what you want and stating what your needs are in connection. It's like, oh, I really need to feel connection before I'm going to be sexual with a person, or I'd like to explore just sensuality. Let's touch. Let's feel that. Let's kiss a little bit. Let's whatever. There's no race to get anywhere. Everybody wants to be sexually connected and feel in pleasure because it's your birthright and you've wanted it. And there's so many rules, so many laws, so many religious bullshit things there that are meant to block us, to keep us in angst, in lack, in suffering, etc. I was going to say, or I will say, some people say, well, celibacy is the best gift I've ever had in my life. And it's true. When you're not in struggle, you're not chasing, you're not trying to figure out what other people want and other things, you're in your biggest act of self-love that you've ever had. That celibacy, that willingness to explore self and figure out what your pulls are and what your wounds are, and all that kind of stuff is the most beautiful thing that you'd ever imagine. And yes, there are Buddhist monks and other monks and stuff and nuns, etc., that suppress themselves their entire life. But it doesn't work. How many, I come from the Catholic Church, there's a ton of Catholic priests, and I'm sure nuns as well, that have gone outside their vows of celibacy, because those aren't natural acts, and basically taken from weak and small individuals, children, young women, blah, 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 because they're suppressed and they're fighting their natural urges of their body. And why do monks and all these things avoid sexuality and have celibacy? Because it confuses and muddies the waters so deeply. But there are monks and tantric practitioners and other things that believe in the sacredness of sexuality. How much of your sexuality is sacred? Until you can move out of your shame and out of your guilt and make sexuality or connection with another to start from connection, intimacy, touch, etc., instead of racing to some genital finish. That's the real start of sexuality. And once we get okay with our body and we can understand what our needs and desires and wants and other things are, and then we can negotiate that exploration with another person from conscious touch, conscious discussion, eye gazing, etc., then you'll start to feel the bubble and the emergence of sacred touch and of sacred love and sacred desire between two people. And then something magical starts to happen. That percolation creates a rise in energy of both. And we can talk about things like Kundalini and other things, where our Kundalini in a suppressed society is almost always just in our pelvis. It's like these two snakes of energy that are meant to go up and down our spine. And to know how powerful Kundalini is, if you know what the medical symbol is, it's called the caduceus. They took it from Hermes, which is one of the Greek gods, but the caduceus has this DNA-shaped snakes that go up a staff, and then there's a top part to it, because our medical system, and we'll talk about the Pope in a sec, but our medical system knows the power of the Kundalini energy. Why would a medical symbol and something adopted by all medicine or whatever be one of our sexual energy going up our central channel of our chakras, our spine? Because when the two snakes reach the top, something magic happens. At the point of ultimate arousal, of orgasmicness or whatever, the snakes will rise above, and the snakes reach our pineal gland and they create a chalice in top of our head. And at the point of release of highly energetic sexuality, and if you've done it right, both partners are fully aroused to that level. At that point of orgasmicness, these snakes release two sacred liquids, a red drop and a white drop or gold drop. There's different translations of it. And they touch the pineal gland, which is a chalice. So it's like a cup that's now part of your head. And those drops touch your pineal gland, and they create something called holy chrism, or Christ consciousness, which is a hugely alchemical release that happens in your body that will spontaneously awaken you and clear you of all your trauma, shame, guilt, a whole bunch of other things. It's quite a freaking intense experience. It's not for the faint of heart. So you need to train and prepare yourself for that level of sexual interaction with another. And when you get there, you spontaneously awaken. This is the root reason why they don't want people having glorious, happy sexuality, because they know people will awaken through ultimately self-loving and sacred interaction. So let's make it dirty. Let's make it disease-filled. Let's make it hookups and all these kind of things, which is not the call of the human body. The human body is to find another that they're completely compatible with and can connect with deeply and share a sacred act. and then you become awakened, and then you're not from lack, and you're not from bullshit, and you're not from pain and suffering. You're from self-love and this love to another. The most unconditional love you'll ever experience. Because conditional love, attachment, codependency, all this stuff are just hooks into another person. It's like, you can't leave me, and I'm going to be upset, I'm going to be jealous, and if you even look at another person or whatever, blah, 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 blah. That can happen on both sides of the fence. Because we want to entrap somebody so that we can have this limited version of sexuality, all from shame and guilt and other things, so that we can continue to feel this tiny bit of pleasure and happiness that we have, which is all we can hang on to, and we're really angry. Not the way it's meant to be. The most freely explorative interaction with another, from gentle discussion, gentle boundaries of opening and other things, can be the most explosive and most powerful, most amazing thing you could ever imagine. It's beautiful. So why is it suppressed? I've given you some ideas. Do you suppress it in yourself? What do you truly desire? When you deep down and you look at all that stuff, don't call it dark, because that passion, that excitement, that fire, that thing that could burn another person down or whatever, in pleasure, in fantasy, in play or whatever, is our birthright. And it's been suppressed for so long, it's burning inside you. And the first time you're going to let it out or whatever, you may need a really strong container, a person that can hold you and love you and hold you in grace, while maybe you cry and scream and yell and shout. And that process of initiation that I talked about, where you burn down and you spontaneously awaken, it's the most intense thing you'll ever experience, which might scare the hell out of people, but it's our birthright. Why is it suppressed? Once you've gone through that, you can go through anything. Trust me, the resilience that comes from being initiated in sexual fire, in sexual orgasmicness and pleasure, will change you forever. So leave with this question. Why is sexuality suppressed? Why is an act of conscious love, of conscious pleasure, of conscious loving yourself suppressed and told to be bad? Who wins? Do you? No. So what's wrong with exploring? And I'm not saying being dirty. I'm saying creating boundaries, asking for what you want, seeing what shows up, going to your edge and exploring that. And that can be just in asking and other things to begin. But once you get conscious and you get comfortable with exploring your edge, you're literally going outside your cage, outside of the stories, outside of the programs that aren't serving anyone. And then it turns into conscious connection with another. And then you start to do things in sexuality and pleasure that's edge play, starting to go to your edge. Oh, I'm almost there. And then come back. Breathe that energy up your spine, up your central channel. Fill yourself with light, and then go again. Until the point that you fill yourself with light, your whole body is expanded. Your partner is seeing your expansion. They're being expanded as well. Your cup is overflowing. And then you release. And then you explore a thermonuclear release of pleasure, of fun, of play. And you're both blessed. The world is blessed. Everything changes. Because that's what sexuality is. That's what pleasure is. That's what will change you and transmute you and shine so much light into you that you will be changed forever. Because that's what sexuality is for. I love you. I thank you. Put some feedback down here. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you.